All right, so thank you all for joining us for the Deep Work, How to Minimize Distractions and Prioritize Important Tasks workshop. Joining us today is Dr. James Navalta, Associate Professor, Master of Science, Graduate Coordinator, Kinesiology and Nutrition Sciences, and Dustin Davis, Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Ph.D. candidate and Grad Rebel Ambassador. They're going to discuss establishing deep work practices by prioritizing tasks and achieving more while still having personal time. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to them to get us started.
Hi, everyone. As Josh introduced, I am Dustin Davis. I have been here for about 4 years at UNLV. I am finishing up the Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Ph.D. program, and I work with James as my primary advisor. So he and I have been able to kind of create some things and some dynamics between us that I think help us achieve more, but also respect mutually each other's personal time. And that's a little about what we're going to be talking about today. James, did you want to add anything before we jumped in?
I think I'm good. I've been here for 11 years now, and um, Dustin does carry me, as you can see in that picture. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the presentation.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to physically carry you for that moment just because of how much you emotionally carry me through the program. I'm kidding. So what is deep work? Well, there's actually a book about it, and that book was written by Cal Newport, who is an associate professor of computer science, and he talks about deep work as the creator of that concept in that book in more detail than we will today. So if you are interested in learning about deep work in that way, and I'm not getting any royalties from talking about this, but if you're interested in the book, I would definitely check it out. I know it's available through Henderson Libraries. Maybe, I don't know about Las Vegas, but the reason I'm saying this is not so much to plug the book because I don't get anything from doing so. It's more about it helped me. I hope it would help you. And I want to be sure that you know that the views that we express here are James and mine, not Cal Newport. So I think that there will be a little bit of expansion on what Cal talked about. And I don't want it to seem like we're just saying what he believes because truthfully, I don't know that other than what he wrote in the book. And so what are our objectives today? Well, the goals aren't taking credit for Newport's ideas, and it's not to give a book summary. But what we do hope to do is have a conversation about the nature of work in academia and also help you identify strategies to work more effectively and rest without guilt, because I think that's something that I've struggled with for 2 years in my master's program and in the 4 years since starting this program here is just how do you manage the work that you have, but also all the other parts of your life. And I think a lot of us faced that during COVID-19 when we were working and living in the same spaces. So that's really what motivated the idea for this workshop is how can we work more effectively, but also reserve time for our personal lives. So I think it would help to give a definition, and these definitions do come from Cal Newport. Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task, whereas shallow work is non-cognitively demanding, logistical style work often performed while distracted. So cognitively, just referring to our thoughts, how thinking intensive is a task. And so as you kind of think about that, I wanted to go to the next slide here to give you 60 seconds to really think about the daily tasks you perform and think about those in the context of those definitions. So in just a moment, I'll go back to the previous slides so that you have a chance to look at those definitions again. But if you don't mind, please take 60 seconds to think about some of the things you do every day as part of your work and figure out whether or not those seem more like deep work or shallow work. All right, I think we're probably getting close to 60 seconds. So what I'd like to do now is go to this slide right here, and I will provide the link. It is available already to share with, so if you have the link, you are able to contribute right here. So I'll go ahead and paste it into the chat. What I'd like for you to do, if you don't mind, is go ahead and jump in this Jamboard. If you've never used one, we can all collaborate here. And what you can do is you can add a sticky note, or you can add a text box. And by doing so, you can list some of the things you do and whether or not you think they are more deep work or shallow work. And I know that we have quite a few people in here, so anticipating that we might run out of space, I made an extra sheet that is basically the same thing. If you run out of room, you see people have already put things down, you can take this tiny URL and it'll take you to this page where it looks the same, and we'll talk about whatever you put on either version. So I put that tiny URL in the chat as well in case you need to access that. So feel free to keep adding things. It's really interesting to see what's coming through. I see that on the right side, we have tasks like responding to email. I definitely can relate. I spend more time than I would like reading emails, responding to emails. Creating to-do lists is one I added. I feel like I'm doing that almost every day. Responding to email while driving. I hope you have a Tesla that drives for you while you do that. Cooking, that's also good. Chatting with friends, running. Chores, yeah. Like cleaning or prepping things around the apartment or house or wherever we live. On the other side, you have deep work, things that are more cognitively demanding, like reading literature, coding for work and school, definitely. Writing papers like grants and assignments, crafting a presentation, running or participating in meetings, definitely. Learning a new program, reading research. So yeah, definitely. So you see that there's this kind of split between what deep work activities can look like and what shallow work activities can look like. And if you do run out of room, don't forget there's this other one, the extra slides. This is on the tiny URL link. But really what James and I wanted to do by showing this split between the two different types of work is at least give you the opportunity to start arguing with friends. That's right in the middle. Hopefully help you see that you can begin to think about the things that you do every day, both for work and for your family or for you or your friends, in nuanced ways. So not all tasks are created alike. Some do require more attention and mental bandwidth than others. And as you'll see as we move a little bit further along, it might be beneficial to build circumstances or conditions around the time when you plan on doing deep work, because you can do a lot of those things on the right while distracted, whereas on the left, you might need to be more focused. James, did you have anything else you wanted to chat about when it came to deep work and shallow work here?
No, I think, yeah, I believe everybody gets kind of the picture and how that divide is. So I'm good.
Awesome. So the reason that I wanted to see that on that screen was hopefully to ask you this question, how much of your day is taken up by shallow work? So when you think about all the things on the right side of this slide here, how much of your day is taken up by shallow work? And this is a moment where James and I would love to open it up to you to turn on your microphone if you'd like and share, or if you wanted to turn on your camera and share. But we wanted to hear from some of you about how much you feel like your day is taken up by shallow work. And if you do decide to chime in, please remember that the meeting is being recorded. So I want to make sure that you have that information if you decide to talk on camera.
I would say, unfortunately, not enough of my day is consumed by shallow work.
Really? Yeah, so tell me more. Why do you feel like that?
It's a tough semester for me. I'm taking 19 credits and working 30 hours a week, so I just feel like I'm constantly, doing deep work since it's my senior year. So this is my first semester. I felt like I don't have as much shallow work that doesn't really consume my attention.
I really like that you brought up this idea, because as you'll see as we move a little bit further, I mean, some people feel like it's different. So I love hearing this perspective from you because it can be draining to do too much deep work, right? So we do need some of those shallow tasks to kind of temper how much we're focusing on things to free our mind up to kind of recover. So to know that you're taking 19 credits and working 30 hours a week and could benefit from more of these shallow work types of tasks makes complete sense.
I will share that I've started tracking my time using Toggle just to see, and looking at a typical day, it's probably anywhere from 50%, split shallow work and deep work. On a good day, I might be able to nudge the deep work up to 60%, but I do, and this is just me in my current position, spend a lot of time responding to emails and things like that that isn't necessarily that deep, right? So,
Right. Yeah, email is a tough one. Um, Communicating in general, like email, Slack, text messaging. So another question, if you do think, and this isn't for everyone, as we heard from uh, one person who's here, I'm sorry I didn't highlight when you spoke, so I don't know your name, but as we heard from somebody who is here, they have a lot of deep work right now. But for those of you who do feel like shallow work takes up a lot of your time, why do you think that time is being taken up by shallow work? And James, you're welcome to chime in on this if you want at any point when you talked about tracking and being 50% or so. Why do you think it takes up that much time for you?
yeah, I think so. I try to keep my inbox not full. So I put maybe some internal pressure on myself to respond to email just to clear that up. And I guess if I could be comfortable with letting it sit for, you know, a little bit, 24 hours, 48 hours, if there are some messages that don't need to be responded to, then I think that could help. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, I think for me, why I think shallow work takes up a lot of my time is if, like, I think in my position, there's so many like bits and pieces that require me to do like my main job. So I think it's really hard to focus on one thing if like one report is demanding, but then a student calls and you have to assist them, or then it's answering this email right away, or making sure someone's getting paid on time. And so I think when a job requires multiple elements that need to be done in a timely manner, like it's really tricky to like really focus on one thing if like you're constantly like having to attend to what's like priority, I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When you are trying to focus on one thing and something interrupts you, whether it's some kind of device or another person who needs help, you have to then switch tasks. And by switching tasks, it's kind of this abrupt, sometimes very sharp change of focus onto something else. And then, moments later, you might be having to switch back. And so if I understand you right, it's that it feels like you don't have a lot of time to focus on deeper work because you have those things that kind of interject and take up your attention.
Yeah, no, I would say that. And I think especially if your job is very student facing, students are always priority. I think working at a university, a lot of people can relate that if we're working on a very serious project, but someone walks in and needs your immediate attention, I think we kind of all drop everything to make sure that people are taken care of. So yeah, I would say 100%.
Yeah. And that notion that you made about you dropping things to take care of that person, it's a very selfless and compassionate thing. And many of us want to do that. I mean, think about wanting to help a colleague or a fellow student, or if you work in an open floor plan, it's supposed to spark creativity, right? By being able to talk and interrupt people and think of ideas. At the same time, it can potentially sap you of the mental resources you need to focus on more difficult tasks. So knowing that some of you are thinking, and I'm monitoring the chat too, we'll put this last question up. How do you feel about completing work? What is it, shallow work? What does it feel like when you take care of emails or take care of that message on Slack or organize your day? Does it feel like, I guess I'm just looking to hear from some of you about like what kinds of feelings do you have when you check those things off your list?
I'll go ahead and jump in. With the email, it's I can see how many I have in there. So it makes me feel like I'm doing something if I can keep it low, right?
Yeah, I feel that with email. I feel that with like my iPhone. Like if I see the notification center is loaded and I'm like checking through those things and clearing it, it feels so good in the moment. That is until 5 minutes later when it's replenished. But yeah. Pam said in the chat, I felt that it's another Tuesday because it's like an onslaught of emails. I know it will return again. However, as for deep work, I feel more satisfied because I feel I achieved something or made some progress in life. Yeah, absolutely, fam. I hear you. So when you mentioned that onslaught of emails and knowing it'll return again, I feel like that's what James and I are kind of commiserating about, right? Because you clear it, but then it returns. But for deep, and that's kind of an immediately satisfying feeling for some people. But if you do that deep work like you're talking about, that's kind of a greater achievement. And so you feel better, or you feel like you've made some progress on something meaningful to you, it sounds like, when you complete deep work. And so I'm really glad that you chimed in, fam, and also that we kind of heard from James as well, because I think that the big deception for some of us, and I'll put myself in this camp, is that shallow work can feel good in the short term. So what do I mean? Let's give some examples. Be honest with yourself. How good does it feel to finish these things? Catching up on Slack messages and group texts. Like if you have a lot of those to catch up on, does it feel good to finally clear through those and be caught up? Or how good does it feel to clear your inbox? Inbox 0 for some people. James, I think you say that you go by inbox 50. So if you can keep your emails from being too many in your inbox, cleaning your desk or your workstation, anytime I want to procrastinate, that's immediately what I'll start doing. And it feels good in the moment. Planning out your week, for me, this is also something that feels good because I feel like I'm making some kind of tangible process if I am planning things out because I know what I'll be doing. Fam in the chat said, it feels good for a while because it liberates me from the guilt of not checking up on their email. Absolutely, until it returns again. Haunts you. Yes, I completely agree. And one thing that we all, well, I shouldn't speak for all of us, but I would imagine many of us experience is the social expectation that we respond to messages very quickly. So if we receive an email or a Slack message or a text, it's like a timer has started. And the longer we wait to respond, the greater risk we take of offending the other person or them being upset with us. Someone said, I cannot function if texts and emails are not read. I agree. I feel you. It's almost as if everything is an emergency. Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that for a lot of people, we do expect quick responses from our colleagues. But at the same time, we want the time to get back to our colleagues when we feels comfortable for us or it's on our own time. So I definitely agree with you. Snoozing emails is so useful. Yeah, that function in Gmail is very nice if you need time and you don't want to forget about it, so it'll pop back up for you. People talking about feeling guilty for not responding right away. I think that in our current day of an age, it's hard to remember that people used to send letters to each other and it would take weeks, if not months, to arrive. And now we can communicate instantaneously. And so there is that expectation. And we'll talk about communicating expectations with our colleagues a little bit later. But I think that communicating about how to communicate is useful. They responded fast, so I need to respond fast. Yeah, that kind of reverse expectation of if they respond fast, then that's kind of what I do. And especially if that person is your superior or somebody supervisor, I mean, if they are your supervisor or mentor, maybe you're emulating what they do because you want to make sure that you have that professional dynamic. And so if they respond fast, you're like, yeah, I got to do the same. Yeah. So some of the other things that might feel good is updating your resume or CV or organizing the 3.4 million files you have on your desktop. I'm looking at you people in here that have those files and need to organize them. But if you have a lot of files on your desktop, I have done that before, and it feels good to get those in the right folders and clear it up. It's almost like clearing up that digital space clears up my headspace. Now, the issue with the kind of short-term feel-good of getting these things finished is that it impersonates meaningful work. So this is a legitimate photo of shallow work impersonating meaningful work. And the problem is that while short-term things like cleaning up or taking care of where files are or clearing your inbox feels really good sometimes, it doesn't actually move the ball forward on really important tasks in life. And this is kind of what one of the participants was talking about earlier when they said that deep work feels like something meaningful in life has been achieved when it's finished. And there's this paradox or this almost it's almost hard to imagine how this happens, but I'm not a physics major, so I mean, I've never taken physics. I know that heavy things usually push lighter things up if they're put on a fulcrum like this. And so if you have like a teeter-totter, something that's heavier should weigh more and then push the thing that's lighter up. But we don't have that when we think about shallow work and deep work. What we see is that if you imagine that what's lower to the ground is more important and we give it more attention, even though things that are urgent are not typically as important, we give them priority. So that email comes through and we want to respond and stop working on that paper, that dissertation, or that master's thesis, or coding, or reading literature, which would be in the important bucket. So for some reason, we tend to give urgent things our attention and important things less attention. But the problem is when we do that consistently, we can run out of time to work on the important things. So I love this GIF. This is us blissfully doing shallow work, like checking our email or doing, taking care of messages. And then all of a sudden, an important deadline for something pops up. And this can be difficult because, for example, some of you in here might be graduate students. As a PhD student, I have to finish my dissertation by the end of really this month so I can submit it and defend. But if I were to not prioritize writing my dissertation, revising my dissertation because I wanted to get to the inbox items, I could potentially have that important deadline of submitting my thesis or my dissertation to my committee sneak up on me. So it's really important to shift our attention towards those more difficult, deep work tasks if we feel like too much of our time is being dedicated towards shallow work. So how do we combat the allure of shallow work, or how tempting it can be to focus on those? I think that brutal yet compassionate honesty with ourselves is the way to go. Being honest about what tasks absolutely have to get done versus what tasks can wait, they just feel like they can't wait. So what does that look like? Well, I think one of the things we can do every single day, and I did not create this idea, many of these ideas, actually most of them I have not created, I just learned from other people and then I'm here to communicate them with James to you, but it's to identify the most important task, or the MIT. Every single day, there's got to be something that is most important to you professionally and personally to achieve. Because as many of you might experience, as the day goes on, time slips away, and if we didn't have our eyes on the or our intention on the main task we want to complete, it might get pushed down the line and then the day runs out. And after we identify that MIT, we need to defend it mercilessly. So by mercilessly, I mean it is really difficult but to make sure that once you've decided this is the thing that you want to get done today, the one thing that if you check off, you feel like you had a successful day, it will require putting that thing first, or those two things if you choose one MIT for your personal life and one for your professional life. So for me, as an example, my most important task every day has to be my dissertation. For you, James, what has been one of the things you've been really working on every day as your most important task?
Yeah, so there are some things that I have to do. Like today is my kind of long teaching day. So it's showing up and it's teaching the students who've paid money to, attend those classes. So for both of those classes that I teach on a Thursday, it's showing up, it's being there for the students, and yeah, giving my undivided attention to them.
Right. Right. That's a great example. And thinking about the days that lead up to that class, it might be that on the day of the class, the MIT is teaching the class, and then a couple of days before, or however long before, there might be a day where your MIT is prepping that class or making sure you have a plan for going in there. But if that always got pushed off, then you would be on the day of the class without a plan. So that's kind of one of those things where if we can identify that MIT and work on it daily, we can be sure that on the day that that thing is due or that thing needs to be done, we've prepared. So this is not an exhaustive list, but some MIT examples are a thesis or dissertation, a semester project, a professional presentation, a job interview. What I would like to do, or like you to do, is spend a few moments and put down the thing or one of the things that is your MIT that you either already know you need to be working on or that you would like to make it your MIT, but you haven't yet. So the question is, what's your MIT right now, or what's one that you want to make your MIT as soon as possible? And again, that's the most important task. So I see finishing midterms, writing a psych capstone essay, a grant that's due in 3 weeks, spending time with family, reading and summarizing literature for a research project. If I didn't already say apply for a scholarship, that one's there. And reading research literature to be prepared for my dissertation defense. That's the one I wrote. So thank you for writing some of these things. It's good to think about this every now and then. The reason I bring this up is because I feel like when I wake up in the day, I kind of just start triaging whatever I need to be doing that day or whatever I feel like I need to be doing that day. And when I just kind of go into respond mode or react mode, I can unintentionally put things that are important but not urgent on the back burner, and put things that are urgent but not important as important on the front burner, and then run out of time like I was discussing earlier. And so I saw one added a group project for an MBA class. Absolutely. And that one's even trickier because now it's not even relying on just yourself, it's relying on other people. Starting on reports for coursework, absolutely. So I think it can benefit a lot of us if we at least set our intention on a most important task, and then putting that task in a time that is most opportune or most likely to benefit us to do it. So what I mean, graduate school interviews. So yeah, I'm just reading them off as they come in, preparing for that interview. It's another good one. So maybe the MIT is being prepared for that graduate school interview, and something you have to be doing every day is making sure that you review questions and practice responding to those questions, or being able to talk about your experience. So how do you prioritize the most important task? Well, there's something that I haven't seen before, but James and I came up with. It's TPS, and I'm not talking about the tire pressure system that your car will tell you about when you have low pressure in your tires. That happens every year to me in Vegas when the temperature drops. But the TPS that we're talking about is different. The T is time. So if you have never thought about this, it could benefit you from thinking about when during the day you are most likely to feel focused enough to focus on deep work. So for me, I know that in the mid-morning, anywhere from like 9 to 11 a.m. or noon, I can really zone in. But if you ask me in any of the other 21 to 22 hours of the day to focus on something, I'm going to have a harder time. But for someone else, 9 to 11 a.m. or 9 to 12 is going to be the worst time possible for them to focus because they work better from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. So it just depends, but this is a unique individual thing for you. And I know James here, he actually has studied kind of chronotype and what people prefer, daytime or nighttime, from the exercise perspective. But from the non-exercise perspective, some people prefer mornings and some people prefer nights, and they might benefit from focusing their deep work there and doing shallow work outside of that window. James, for you, what time do you like to work on the most difficult tasks you have?
Yeah, I'm a morning person, so I do like to get up and do my most important tasks in the morning. Sometimes, there's competing interests, trying to get the kids off to school and things like that. But outside of the things that I have to do, when I do have a moment, it's best spent in the morning.
Yeah. How about anybody else? Anybody feel like they're not morning people and they focus better in the afternoon, evening, or nighttime? Function better at night. So focus better in the evening, like 5 to 8 p.m. Yeah. Creative work at night and more analytical in the morning. I am jealous that you feel like you can do important work at 2 times a day. I am very jealous. But no, that makes sense. Morning person, 7 to 8 a.m. So an earlier time slot. So as you might be able to tell, so 5 to 10 p.m., so later in the day, you might be able to tell that where we're going, which is to, once you can think about and identify what time you work best, starting to protect that time, which is what we'll get to shortly. But before we talk about that, there's also place. So time and place. So you know what time, now what place do you work best? I cannot work in bed, but some people will swear by it, and that's what works for them. But just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean it doesn't work for them. I need to be sitting at a desk upright. I can't be reclined in a chair. And it needs to be in my home or a library or some other place. I have tried working in coffee shops, and sometimes it's worked great for me. Other times it's not. But some people will exclusively feel like they do their best work in coffee shops, and that's valid. So identifying what place you work best is helpful, because now you can see, okay, what time of day, where do I need to be? And that at least increases the probability that you will do deep work well, or by well, I mean being able to focus on it and get it done. And then space, so it's not just place, but what's in your space, which might at first sound like the same thing, like, Dustin, what do you mean place and space? But place is going to be, to me, that's like physical location, where are you? And then space, in that space, what do you fill it with? So some people might like to have a hot drink like coffee or tea. Some people might like to have a cool drink. They might like to have their house plant or have music on or noise canceling headphones. Other people might not like to have any sound at all. Some people might feel comfortable with their pet sitting next to them. I know that when James and I have our WebEx calls, sometimes one of his cats will cross the keyboard and join the call as well. But making sure that you basically have what you need there to set you up for success in doing that difficult task. That's really the message that we have for you here, which is identifying that time, place, and space to be your best or to do your best. So knowing that, I'd love if you would take some time to add what your optimal TPS is and maybe give it a little reason why. Now, you don't have to type out a paragraph about why, but if you write your sticky note and say what your optimal TPS is, and maybe it's just the time, place, or space. It doesn't have to be all three. Maybe you could chime in the chat or with your voice about why you feel like that TPS works best for you, just so other people can hear from your perspective when you do your best deep work. I love seeing how different the TPSs are. While people are adding their different TPSs here, I did receive a question in the chat. Since I'm working on my dissertation, do I feel that I need to be in deep focus all day, every day? And I will be very forthright with you in telling you that I can't be in deep focus all day. I feel like it's still a struggle for me. And so that's one of the things I wanted to communicate as we come in. I know James feels the same. We are not sages or like full of wisdom about how to make this work every single day. I think that the key is that we try. For me, with my dissertation, I'll be grateful if I can get 1 to 2 hours of solid, undistracted, dedicated time to writing and editing my dissertation a day. And some days I just really have a hard time mustering the motivation or conditions to get more than that or even that. So it's not to say that I'm able to implement this as greatly as I would like every day, but I do try to use the things that we're talking about to do well on my dissertation. I mean, I guess right now I'm trying to turn a couple of those chapters into papers, but I was able to get my dissertation to my committee with 4 weeks for them to consider it before my defense. So I feel grateful for that. But this truly did help. These things, figuring out where, when, and how my environment looks, could make me focused enough to at least stack it. And kind of to your question, because I see things coming in still, I'm not sure that we need to be deeply focused all day, every day. I mean, we sometimes as humans expect growth and progress, and that's in life and on projects, to be some kind of transformational leap. But it's actually just day by day, little by little, that something is built. And so if you can do even some a day or 1 or 2 hours a day, you'll get things done. Now, I will speak about what Cal Newport talked about in deep work. He will keep a sticky note next to his monitor, something visible, and he will put tally marks as he accumulates deep work hours throughout the day or week. And I remember in the book, he talked about how some weeks it was only a few, like a handful. So even somebody who is established in their career can still struggle to establish deep work hours. But when he would track throughout the week, he would have a handful. So, but he's still able to be successful in his career, and so I don't think that it requires being deeply focused all day.
Yeah, and I'll jump in, and it's, not something that you're going to do. You're going to listen to this workshop and then go out and be able to deep work for 8 hours a day. It's more something that you kind of build up to. You're cognizant of. You have to be intentional in order to do deep work.
Exactly. So I've been keeping an eye on these as they come in, and I just really want us all to appreciate how much variation there is on the screen. Because as James just mentioned, it's not that we all leave this workshop and then do 8 hours of deep work a day. It's more understanding and appreciating our own process and realizing that all of us are capable of doing deep work that makes some kind of difference in our lives and others. But the way that we get there doesn't look like the person standing next to us or sitting next to us. It's important to validate and appreciate your process and know that you're capable of doing important work in a place that looks way different than how I would do it. So thank you for all those of you who've contributed in the chat and also put where you like to be. I hope that by writing out what your TPS is, you have a better idea, if you didn't already, about where you might be able to go next and do your most important task. So how do you defend your MIT mercilessly? Well, remember I mentioned that we have to defend it. Once you know what the MIT is and you know that you're going to work on that, I really recommend that you schedule your MIT for your optimal TPS. So all the things we saw on this last page, and then a few slides back when you listed your MITs, making sure that on every day you can, that is a work day for you, making sure your MIT overlaps with the TPS so that you're not trying to do your most important work at your least proficient or least prepared time of day or space or place. Now, I know that many extraneous external factors determine this. Like James, you mentioned just a little bit ago that you like to do your MIT in the morning, but sometimes taking care of your children takes priority. Completely understandable. But on other days, you are able to align your most important task with your TPS. And if you do that enough times throughout the year, you're able to achieve a lot of outstanding things. The other thing is to eliminate distractions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but it's really important to eliminate distractions and then also set and maintain healthy boundaries. So boundaries can help eliminate distractions, and we'll talk a little bit about how next. But before we do, please take about 30 to 60 seconds to list one or two of the biggest distractions that you face when you're trying to focus on something. And I see that the link is still in the chat, and it's visible on my screen. So if you need to get back in, if you bounce out of the Jamboard when you are finished posting, you can get back in with that link. Yeah, I love these. YouTube.com, YouTube shows up in two areas, social media, emails that pop up and appear to need an urgent reply. Absolutely, I actually put that down, feeling the guilty urge to respond to emails. Phone calls, notifications from devices like a laptop phone, Reddit. It's funny, it's almost like technology is the common thread through so many of these distractions. It's like crazy. TikTok, absolutely. Twitter. Other than the phone calls, I'm not sure that I see any on here that's, well, actually, the phone calls is a human calling you, but I mean, some of these things are just algorithms that are pinging us to give them our attention. Newsfeed. When in deep focus, the task you set to complete is much more difficult, and I seek a shallow task as a distraction. Absolutely. The emotional discomfort of trying to do hard things that are really important pushes me to want to go to shallow tasks instead. So I appreciate you putting that down. Discord pings, absolutely. YouTube rabbit hole, push notifications from apps, urge to clean the house before doing work. My girlfriend, that's what somebody wrote. It got deleted instantly. I wonder if the girlfriend is in here. So yes, there's a lot of distractions. One of the things, and this is, I know it's easier said than done. I am not saying that, like, I almost am afraid to say it because people are going to probably scoff and be like, well, duh. But I even struggle to do it. For your MIT, when you're working on it during deep work, it can be immensely helpful to put your phone away from you in a different space. And I know what you might be thinking, oh my gosh, but there are important people who have my phone number and they could call me or text me and need something. One of the ways that I help myself not constantly use my phone is I make sure that all the people that are vital to get through to me, no matter what time of day it is, are on my favorites so that even when my phone is on Do Not Disturb, their phone calls will come through on loud. So even though texts are being silenced and apps are being silenced on my phone that is across the room, if it rings because someone needs to get a hold of me, I can hear them call. That's one of the main things I do, and also disabling notifications on so many apps that I really don't want determining when I give it my attention. But James, what about you? What are some of the things you do to eliminate distractions, especially knowing you work in a public space where there's an open door?
True. So I have 0 notifications turned on my phone. I figure that if it's important for me, then I will look at the email or the app or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't subscribe to any of that. I also physically put my phone in a different location, and my wife has been mad at me before, has called and like, why didn't you? Like, well, I was doing something. So yeah, it's about being intentional on setting up a distraction-free workplace.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. So as you think about these distractions, I want you to also think about how you can set a new boundary that would protect your deep work and why. Now, this is something you can think about yourself or you can post it here. And by boundary, I don't just mean with somebody that's a human being that you communicate with. It can also be with your device or how you use your technology. But what's one thing that you could do to help yourself be able to focus when you're doing your deep work? So for me, I would say at this point, I feel like I need to put my phone in another room where I can still hear it, but I will still, if it's in reaching distance, I will like stretch my body out to get it if I feel like I need to use it. So putting my phone in another room while doing deep work, that's mine. And why would that be helpful? Well, for me, I mean, honestly, I think that I won't use my phone as soon as I feel emotional pain from struggling to make progress on my MIT. Usually when I feel that emotional pain of like, I'm hitting this point where I don't know how to make progress, I immediately want to jump ship and get on my phone because of the discomfort of not knowing what to do next. I like close my email tab, close YouTube with a sad face. Yeah, that one would help too. Turn on do not disturb on my laptop and phone and only leave notifications on for important contacts. Absolutely. I'm just going to check the other slides to make sure nobody's put anything on these. Okay, cool. Okay. Closing the email tab. When I leave it open trying to complete deep work and my brain always wants to check it. Yeah, for sure. Closing out unnecessary and irrelevant tabs, windows, and programs, definitely. Yeah, I like these a lot. So I think that what we're getting here through this like through line on the common theme is creating some boundaries with technology so that we have the agency or the autonomy to choose when we interact with it, which I think is good for a lot of reasons, not just to do more focused work, but also to make sure that we as people can use these devices as tools, not as kind of devices that manipulate our attention to, be on things that generate ad revenue and keep us attached and linked with really like kind of cognitively stimulating content so that we want to keep doing that instead of doing the things that are important to us. Because I'll speak for myself, not everything that I feel tempted to like click on and read or watch on YouTube is something that really matters to me. It's just that my brain wants to see it because it feels like it's more interesting than the deep work that I need to be doing. The other one I saw, telling my partner I'm on do not disturb mode, that's a great one.
And I will say that, the app developers and social media have done work, psychological studies, and they know what things are a draw and a pull for you. So it's fighting a lot of the just natural urges that are that are part of you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and blunt language, I think what James is saying, and not to put words in his mouth, this will be what I'm saying on top of what he's saying, is that they prey on our weaknesses for attention. And so when it's not a human weakness, it's not a weakness in any of you or any of us. It's that there are powerful forces at play that pull our attention because of things like the ability to generate money if we're giving them attention. So we're sitting down for deep work and we're interoptimal TPS, now what? And I want to make sure that all of you know, I get that we're running up to the end here, so we only have a couple more things to say. So if any of you have to leave because the hour is up, I want to thank you, James, I'm sure as well, for coming. But for those of you who stick around for the next 5 minutes or so, we will just be wrapping up here. So I wanted to give you that update. But what we can do is we can set the mindful intention of saying, hey, this is what my goal is, to sit down and do this task, and kind of letting go of expectations, not saying that I have to get this amount of work done on this deep work task by the end of the hour or 2 hours, but instead, this is what I hope to achieve. Letting go of that expectation gently, and then just getting to work on it. It's sometimes the greatest barrier is just not knowing how it's going to turn out. Also recognizing that progress is not linear. I've had some low points during the last 4 years. I feel like even though I'm getting really close to the end, I feel like now is the low point for me, because it's really hard for me to sustain the motivation to keep working on things when I'm so close to finishing, and I've been in academia for the last, I guess, 10 years almost. So it's like, it's this point where I feel like I'm at the bottom of this little like cavern right here, but I'll be a butterfly if I just pull it together and do the deep work I need to do until graduation. And then also accumulation. Somebody earlier mentioned or asked me if I do deep work for long periods of the day, and the honest answer is no. I think that doing what Cal Newport does, which is marking hour by hour, or maybe even doing 20 minutes at a time, or 25 minutes, there's this Pomodoro technique, this tomato timer you might have heard of, where you work for 25 minutes focused without distractions, then you take a 5-minute break and you do that repeatedly. I've done that, and it's also been helpful for me in staying focused. So thinking about accumulation over the long term, not getting a ton done all in one day. And then what I wanted to do is, James and I wanted you to have the chance to talk about how you will implement the ideas you just shared. I think you've all done that throughout the presentation in other areas. So I don't think it's necessary to do it again now. I was really hoping with James that we would leave this if we felt like we hadn't already heard from a lot of you, but we have. And so I appreciate that you have given us ideas of how you'll eliminate distractions. Somebody said they use Pomodoro and they have a Discord bot that times 50-minute sessions and lets them know when to take a 10-minute break. That's great, because yeah, that's another way to do it. You don't have to do the 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. You can do the 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off. So I love hearing that. And now for the parting ideas. One thing that James and I want to make sure you know is that there are some real costs of every yes that you provide. So when people ask you to do things and you feel like that would get in the way of your MIT, then you might feel that urge, like I do, to say yes because I want to be a kind person. But by saying yes, I then say no to spending time with my partner, or giving time to my dog, or to making sure that I say yes to myself, which is focusing on the thing I need to do to graduate. So knowing that maybe it would be helpful to write down all the costs of saying yes and all the benefits of saying yes, and determining in your context whether or not you should say yes to the request that you just got. Another thing, it's important to play and to give yourself self-compassion. So making sure that you don't view it only as this rigid taskmaster kind of structure for deep work, but that you give yourself the chance to explore in whatever your MIT is, and being kind to yourself when you feel like you don't get as much done as you'd like. And then crafting your own process. Hopefully you saw that so many of us reported different distractions, different TPSs, different MITs, and that gives you confidence that your way of doing it isn't the right or wrong way. None of us have that. There's just a way that works for us or doesn't, and we can work towards creating a way that helps us achieve the things we want. And then lastly, there's this idea of a shutting down procedure. So if you decide that you're done for the day, or you decide ahead of time that at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. I'm going to need to stop. Cal Newport talks about this. This is his idea, where he will say to himself, after checking his email one last time and making a list of things he needs to do tomorrow, that he will literally out loud say, I'm shutting down. And he will close his laptop or shut down his computer and consider that as his conscious marker of being done with work for the day. So those are some parting ideas. If you want more about this, I think James and I can recommend the book. But before we leave, I also want to give James the opportunity to say anything else he'd like, because he has helped me tremendously, and not just thinking of these ideas and implementing them, but also respecting the boundaries that we've created together.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. I think it definitely is, as we have talked about, it's an individual process. And so you can't cookie cutter it. You can't just read Cal Newport's book and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You do really have to find out what works for you. And those of you that are students, it is definitely worth talking with your advisor, having a conversation, so that you're both on the same page. So it's not where your advisor is sending you messages and expecting immediate replies when you're trying to do deep work.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that final note, James. And I'm open to taking questions via email. I know we have to end here shortly, but if you email me at the email shown on the screen, dustin.davis@unlv.edu, I'll be happy to get to you. And I mean, James as well, I think that you would be happy to respond if anybody emails us. But thank you again, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to our presenters for sharing their time and all this amazing advice for us. So before you all log off, please take a few minutes to fill out this workshop feedback survey that I am posting in the chat right now. It means so much to us and helps us improve the workshops that we provide you. And also, like Dustin said, if y'all have any questions, feel free to email them at that right there. If you need their emails, you can email the Grad Academy, and we can get y'all connected if for whatever reason you weren't able to get that information down. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.